Well, I'm from Statesville, North Carolina, and I went to North Carolina State University and got a degree in zoology in 1980, and had a variety of career and school experiences after that, and ended up settling on the counseling field. So I returned to graduate school at Appalachian State to study psychological counseling, and have since worked at Appalachian as a full-time employee in a variety of capacities. Director of the Upward Bound program. I'm now technology coordinator for the Learning Assistance program. I teach learning skills and success courses for college students, and I have somehow been able to have a almost full-time art career over the last 20 years as well. So I have a busy life, but a very fulfilling life. Have two young daughters, and my wife Lynn is the director of the Academic Advising Center at Appalachian State. So we're tried and true Appalachian employees. We love the town of Boone. Wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Being from Statesville and in the foothills, one of my life goals was to be able to live in the mountains around places where I could fish and camp and hike. And I've enjoyed every minute of my 25 years living here in Boone. I, like many artists' bios, or most artists' bios, would start out by saying I painted or I was drawing all the time as a child and painting some. I think we all start the same way in some respects. And like many artists, I was relatively successful at pushing art out of my life a number of times, thinking that it wasn't a viable option, but it always seemed to boomerang back in some capacity, and in many ways wouldn't let go of me. So when I was 21, I think was the first time I really decided to make an attempt at learning to paint in watercolor. And one of the inspirations for that was my mom brought home a book from the college library where she worked that had been discarded, and it was called The Hows and Whys of Watercolor by Edgar Whitney. And it was the ancient version of this current version, The Complete Guide to Watercolor Painting. And when I opened that book, I saw amazing work that had an energy and quality to it that I'd never seen in any other artwork. And I got very excited about trying to learn this for good and trying to replicate some of the techniques and strategies that I saw in that book, which I found were a little more difficult than they looked. So if you look at some of my earliest paintings when I was 21 or 22, they look a lot like Edgar Whitney paintings because they're copied straight out of his early readings. To back up a bit, I did take art lessons when I was 12 years old with a local portrait painter in Statesville, Marie Holman, who was the first individual to turn me on to what an art studio felt like. And I think that was just as important as the actual painting process. The smells and the feeling of this studio in her basement, and the turpentine and the mixtures just fascinated me. So that was my first real exposure to the fact that a studio was a pretty special place, and that it had a lot of creative energy in the air. And for some reason that first series of classes has stayed with me as a strong memory. So again, I attempted watercolor in my early 20s and had some success painting some landscapes and old home places in northern Iredell County, which is an incredibly beautiful part of North Carolina and where many of my relatives lived. I remember one big aha moment came when one of my relatives' neighbors saw a painting I'd done of his original home place on Pisgah Church Road in North Iredell County and called me and wanted to buy it. And I was absolutely dumbfounded that someone would actually pay me for this landscape of this home place. And that $120 sale opened up a whole new world for me in terms of possibilities, and I think created sort of a drive where, again, not just the satisfaction of making money with art, but the fact that someone would like something that I created enough to buy it and put it on their wall, on the wall of their home, was a really neat feeling. And that feeling, again, has never really left. I came to graduate school and again successfully pushed art back to the back burner. And then during about the middle stage of my graduate program, I started eating lunch at Boone Drug and wandering upstairs to this rickety old gallery on the second floor. And I saw some of the most amazing watercolors that I had ever seen after I'd put down Ed Whitney's book, and found out that this fellow was a pharmacist and had started an art supply company. And I said, well, he and I are going to meet and I'm going to learn to paint from him. Really paint. I'd been messing with watercolor on and off for a number of years, but that was a big jumping off point when I connected with Joe Miller and became friends with Joe Miller and took classes from Joe. And it just sort of opened my options to the wide world of watercolor up. I never stopped from that point forward in terms of taking classes, studied with Skip Lawrence, later studied with Chinky Chi several times, then began teaching on my own in 2000, I think at one of the inaugural Cheap Joe's workshops in the new facility. So again, it's been challenging at times to combine two careers, but I realized that I either could choose to pursue art full-time or stay at the university full-time, or I could create a hybrid of my life and try and do both as well as possible. I love Appalachian, and getting my position at Appalachian State University was one of the highlights of my life as well. It was a goal that I never really imagined I would achieve, and that was not a position that I wanted to leave easily. And I had friends who were full-time artists who certainly gave me their perspective of what it was like to be a full-time artist and the rewards as well as the challenges. So I kind of made a unique decision, I think, to try and do both. And it's worked out remarkably well. I'm not going to say that my life hasn't been way too busy at times, but I've maintained an energy for both of those workplaces and settings, and certainly a passion for the work I do both at Appalachian and in my watercolor endeavors and teaching. Well, I think, again, a common answer that most artists will give you is that they have to, which is in some ways an easy way out. But painting is really a passion. It's something that is an internal drive. Once you experience the, for lack of a better term, creative high, when something that you've studied hard and worked hard to pull together actually does come together, it sort of can blow you away and create a unique energy that I've never been able to get anywhere else. One of the quotes that I always remember when Skip Lawrence was asked why he paints, he said, "The truth is, it interests me more than anything else I know." Trying to work out compositions, trying to take an experience of visiting a beautiful mountain area or landscape area and then trying to convey that with both your craft skills and your technique skills, but more importantly, trying to convey that emotionally on a piece of paper is a wonderful challenge, and one that's very energizing and addictive. It's a trial and error process. We learn by making a lot of mistakes. A painting never ends up looking the way you think it's going to, and that's part of the magic and mystery of painting in general, I believe. We have to be open to, in a way, dancing with the medium, and that sounds a little corny, but particularly with watercolor, you know, we hear a lot of folks talk about the fact that they can't control it. And in my view, that's one of the beauties of watercolor, is that I don't have to make an effort to control it at all times. I serve as a guide, and I certainly have goals in many cases when I'm trying to create a painting. But if I'm not open-minded to look at what is happening on that paper and what watercolor is doing of its own accord, then I think I'm missing the boat in a lot of cases. As Edgar Whitney says, substances obeying their natural properties do beautiful things. So we have to give watercolor some breathing space and allow it to work on its own, but at the same time, we certainly identify our own goals and needs when we approach a painting. When you bring painting into your life, or I guess the world of art and artists into your life on a full-time basis, I think many artists are like this. One of the challenges is that we tend to fill our plates pretty full, and there are all kinds of tangential endeavors and projects that we get into that we really don't have time for, but also serve the purpose of energizing us and keeping us interested in not only making art, but the art field in general. Having a background with technology and being a technology administrator, I've spent a lot of time studying and learning about digital imaging and inkjet printing, and all those things have been important to helping me advance my art career by creating a small company where we do our own giclée prints and do pretty much all the processes of printmaking in-house, so that we're completely in control of the print product. Along with several close friends, Don Blair and Tim Miller, I started Bear Trail Studio Partners back about 5 years ago, around 2006. And again, we develop and distribute giclée art products. We're soon moving into selling other artists' work as well as my own. And the possibilities have been really promising of developing that business into something that's a little more far-reaching than just our local area. So again, that's an area where I spend a good bit of energy and have to balance that business with my painting career. My website is weswaugh.com. Our giclée and business website is beartrailart.com. So you can visit both of those endeavors to learn a little more about both my painting career and the print production career.